Welcome, everyone. Thanks for jumping in. I know we're just getting started. We'll give everybody about another 30 seconds to a minute to get comfortable, get situated, and we'll kick things off.
Awesome.
Meanwhile, Max is going to keep picking out the new color of the seats he's about to get.
There you go. Nothing new for a while. Yeah, we got that. We got the big purchase, the house in Austin on Monday. So we're not making any other decisions anytime soon.
That's a big enough thing to go through in a year like this, even thinking about buying a house, moving, all that fun stuff.
It's crazy how many people are moving in the middle of a pandemic. And on some levels it makes sense. On other levels it's like, man, like relocating. If everybody was sitting here this time a year ago, I wonder if they'd be making the same decisions, or if they would have forecasted any of this, any of the decisions they'd be making, even though like the circumstances have changed significantly.
Oh, of course not. Well, you and I've joked about this before. It's like sitting where we are a year ago when we were mid-launch of Sonar, getting everything moving. It's like, it's going to be a great year, ready to go kill it. Like, was there a forecast for a pandemic on? Of course not.
Yeah, right? I mean, I feel like there were COVID beneficiaries, then like businesses who kept growing through it, but weren't necessarily beneficiaries. Then there were companies that were kind of unchanged, and then there were like companies that went out of business. And those buckets are very few in the beneficiaries, probably more in the, kept flat or went out of business. So fortunate for us. I don't think we're in the beneficiaries bucket, but we are in that second bucket where we still grew nicely through the year, and things seem to be coming back strong. I mean, end of Q2, Q3, roaring back, and Q4 looking good. So hopefully everybody else is looking kind of similar to that.
Yeah, I think so. But everybody that I'm kind of in that same bucket, there's about 3 buckets like that you're talking about. And
yeah,
I think I've talked with everybody and every one of them, for better or for worse, but you're spot on. So, well, cool. Looks like we've got some folks in. We'll go ahead and kick things off. Max, man, excited to have you here. I know we got a lot to talk about to kind of set the stage for everybody. One of the biggest topics that we've all seen in 2020, and we're obviously going to see it as we continue to grow in 2021, is the impact that operations teams bring to all organizations. Super excited to have my good friend Max on. Max, I'm not going to steal your thunder. I'm going to let you introduce yourself, tell everybody who you are, what you do, and we'll keep moving.
Yeah. So I'm the founder and CEO of Sales Hacker, which many of you may know, and also the VP of Sales Engagement at Outreach. Quick backstory is started out as the first sales hire at a company called Udemy, online education marketplace. Was the 8th hire, first one focused on sales, built up the sales team and the supply side of that business, and learned a lot about hacking a sales team and a sales process together. So, I was the RevOps person, I was the sales development person, I was the AE, I was the sales manager, I was the sales leader. I wore all hats, and got a reputation for building quite a streamlined process. Turned that into Sales Hacker, which is a media company for B2B salespeople. Wrote a book called Hacking Sales, which is all about leveraging sales technology in your sales process, especially for early stage startups, getting started from scratch. Then went on to write another book called Sales Engagement once I joined Outreach. Sales Hacker was acquired by Outreach in 2018, became the VP of Marketing, and then recently pivoted from the marketing side of the house to the revenue operations side of the house, running sales engagement or sales engagement practice. We call it, as the VP of Sales Engagement. So hopefully I have a little bit of a different lens than maybe some of your other guests, and should be a fun conversation.
Oh, absolutely. I love that, given that background of everything. As you were going through it, I'm sure most of our attendees were like, this is an operations conversation. He's got so much sales experience. All we're talking about is like sales, and I built this, and I wrote the book on sales. You're absolutely. And I think one of the coolest parts about having you on and some of the stuff we're going to talk about is how you're now leveraging that background, obviously, doing sales, building Sales Hacker, amazing community. We have a lot of that in common with what we're doing with building our Wizard of Ops community. So obviously we have a lot of our community members here on this call as well, and they're seeing a lot of the strategy that you use that we're now obviously using. I'm getting a lot of that advice from you day in and day out about how to build a successful community. And I think what I'm most excited about in hearing your perspective of now kind of having so much of that sales and marketing aspect. One of the similarities that we both have is we're B2B SaaS junkies, if you will. We know the ecosystem, we know the space. Watching your transition and now focus on leveraging sales and marketing experience and moving in, like you said, into that RevOps world. One, love to understand how the RevOps world is built at Outreach, but also obviously in this new role of yours on the engagement side, sitting in RevOps is fascinating to me. So great place to
Yeah.
start of kind of giving us the lay of the land there.
Yeah, definitely. So revenue operations at Outreach rolls up to the CRO. We've got an SVP of revenue operations and excellence, ROE, which I think is an interesting and unique role to Outreach. And, being that we are a sales technology company, I think we have to drink our own champagne, and we have to kind of be on the forefront of like the trends that are happening, in our space. So we've got a VP of sales ops. We've got probably a 9 or 10 person team under that. We've got a lot of hiring to do for a company that's our size. Our RevOps organization is not as built out as it needs to be. So reports up to the CRO, lives under sales. And we're going to get into in a little bit, what a SVP of ROE does, and a little bit more about how sales engagement fits into that as well.
I love it. I think if there's any common denominator that I take away from a lot of that is, I mean, we all look at Outreach, just unicorn in the making right now, the way you guys are growing, but there's still being a little bit of a common thing that we talk about with a lot of our customers all the time of, look, RevOps is still building. I think we can all say that we're a little, as much as the person inside of RevOps and the people that we work with every day are proactive folks, the way we build some of our teams is a little reactive. There's so often that we end up hiring based on the need instead of hiring based on where we're going sometimes. So when you say that you're still building that group out and how you're actually formulating it and building out the different people in it, just kind of goes to show to a lot of the folks that we talk about in our community and a lot of our customers, some of our mutual customers, how they're still building out their programs. As we get into this further,
the interesting thing is like a lot of sales ops, I think it was for a long time. Now it's RevOps where they're combining the two. But when like your stack was just CRM and maybe a data provider, you didn't need the things that you need today, where now like we've had this kind of, I don't know, like sales technology revolution that's happened in the past 5 years. Like if you look at the amount of funding that sales and marketing technology has gotten in the past 5 years, there are needs for so many new roles under the RevOps umbrella. And so things are changing. So I don't think I don't think you can point to an organization and say like, that's how it should be built. That's how it should be created. Because I think we're all going through this together right now, especially as we see like companies like us, like Outreach. And I put this in my post the other day, but we've got 4,500 customers. Our whole space maybe has 8,000. Salesforce has 200,000 customers. They represent 20% of the market. So there's 1 million companies that have CRM and 8,000 that have sales engagement. We're only in like the very, very beginning of what we're doing, but we're becoming a crucial component of your sales tech stack. And therefore like you're starting to need headcount just for people to manage how sales engagement works at businesses. And I think this is gonna proliferate from there and compound from there.
Yeah, you're spot on. So often we have these conversations about the it sounds corny, the evolution of revenue operations, right? This wording being funny as it is, but where we see that 5 years ago, maybe 10 years ago even, you had one person on staff, on your team that was the technology guru. They managed the tech stack. They were the Salesforce admin. They were responsible for Marketo and Outreach and Gainsight and you name it. There's so many platforms out there that integrate now. What we're finding, zoom forward to today, is now you have some of these individual owners of these platforms, and these teams now start to have different complexities. You have somebody dedicated, even just supporting the sales team. You can still call them sales ops. They might have somebody supporting the marketing team, still might call them marketing ops. I think the naming convention, all of it, we're all truthfully figuring it out together. But the reality remains the same. I tell a lot of our customers this often. There's this X and Y axis, and there's this trajectory of how our technology is going, and it's growing at a certain angle. And our teams are growing, and the amount of knowledge that we all have in our brains of how to facilitate some of this technology is growing at a slightly lower trajectory angle. And
Yeah.
it's just creating this gap between how we as technologists know how to administer it and how to truly leverage it.
Yeah.
It's fascinating to me.
Yeah. I agree. I mean, it's an exciting time. It's a really exciting time to be in sales ops, rev ops. We are seeing some stuff internally that we're looking at now. We're like, wow, how can we use our own product to make this better? Whether it's account planning, territory planning, understanding, the naming conventions and stuff like that. I know Sonar is tackling a lot of this stuff too that, we're excited to dive into as well. So anyway,
Yeah,
should we get in the conversation?
let's get it, man. Go
Let's
for
do
it. I know we're talking about a little bit of hiring for that SVP of ROE. Titles we were just talking about can all be a little ambiguous, but you really think about how your team prioritizes that role, and really what does that mean? I kind of want to start there and unpack that a little bit.
Yeah. Okay. So SVP of Revenue Operations and Excellence. To really fully understand why operational excellence is important, I'll probably take a step back and talk about, real quick, like why even pivot into like a VP of sales engagement role? For me, I think that outreach is going to be the control panel for GTM going forward, for sales, marketing, and customer success. As the company that obviously operates outreach, we need to be the best at how we use it, better than anybody else. We need to inspect every area of our business that could possibly use it, make sure we're using it the best way. We need to make sure it ties together with all the other solutions that we or any other company would use, whether that's CRM or data lake or BI like Tableau, et cetera, et cetera. So, my role is focusing on all those different areas, pushing on them, seeing where there are soft spots, where we can be better, what are some things that we're doing that are really interesting, and then showcasing that to the rest of our community. What we need from there is not just somebody who focuses on sales engagement, but somebody who focuses on everything in the business to make our business more efficient, more effective, and overall, execute on operational excellence. So hiring an SVP of ROE, we call it, Revenue Operations and Excellence, is a really interesting role. Oversees all rev ops, oversees pipeline, oversees our data, oversees all the things that we need to do to build a predictable business. And I think that's the key. Is like, are we getting the most out of the team the way we currently have it set it up? I know some people do it one-to-one SDR AEs, other people do pods. What is the right way to set that up? Are we approaching our account planning the right way? Are we going after our low-hanging fruit, or are we getting into a lot of conversations where companies want outreach, but we can't satisfy what they need, right? If we're having conversations with a bunch of healthcare companies that need us to be HIPAA compliant, we're not HIPAA compliant yet, then we're spinning our wheels. Are we aligned from sales, marketing, and customer success? I think that there needs to be somebody's role that ties all of that together. And then this person acts as, the CRO's essentially right hand, knows the numbers, runs the meetings, and frees up the CRO to do what the CRO does best, which in a lot of cases should be a person who is in our largest deals, whether it's customers that are, happy, customers that are unhappy, prospects, whatever it is, anybody that wants to expand that is of a certain size, they need their time freed up to be the face of the sales organization. So I love this role because they're kind of like the dial turner and lever puller behind the scenes. But we don't want them to be behind the scenes anymore. We want to give them a pedestal to be out there on the public on. So when we were hiring for this role, it was actually really important for us that they were also extremely personable and could be out there, to speak, on certain things like this or conferences or whatnot. And so I think that's a key part of the job too, is to be out there, be vocal, be the one showcasing some of the really amazing things that we're doing internally, so that we can, put them on a pedestal and show everybody else how to do them too.
Yeah. I think a couple of things to kind of unpack there, and I love it. I think there's always going to be, in the operations side of this, we talk about this pie chart all the time, how we challenge our customers and ask this all the time. How are you dividing your pie chart on a daily basis between the two segments of strategic and tactical? I think we know all the bullet points in both of those categories. You name a couple of them on the strategy side, account segmentation, how are we hiring, how are we growing our revenue, where are we succeeding, where aren't we? On the technical side, how are we using all these systems and all the data to tell the story to support the strategic side? I take that entire pie chart and package it up real nice. And I love how you just said, how do we start to bring operations towards the forefront? And by that, I mean, it's kind of one of the questions that we talked about leading up to this. How do we get operations to sit at the big kid table? I think so often we've had this role that is, we know it's important. We know that it's sometimes behind the scenes. Your rev ops manager, your sales ops manager, director, analyst, doesn't matter what the title is, ends up being that right hand to someone so strategic. Ask any CEO or CRO or anybody in the executive level where they go and get a lot of their data from. It's from operations. Quarterly, we're running board meetings. Like, how do I go and get my trends? What's my conversion rate? What's my pipeline? This is all stuff that's been sitting in the background. I love where you're taking that, of bring it to the forefront and get them at the big kids table.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, very transparently, we're pre-IPO company. You could read that in any article on the internet right now. And where we sit today, I think two of the most important roles for us going forward are this role and our head of product marketing. I think pricing and packaging work and building predictability to your sales process are the two most important things you can do before you IPO. And I feel great about where our product's at. I feel great about where our sales leadership, success leadership, support, all these other things are at. But you're going from being a startup and a private company to being a public company, a corporation, and that predictability and the reliance really on revenue operations at this point is larger than any period I've seen in our company right now. So it's another reason why I wanted to be a part of this organization is because I want to help them succeed. It's super important to our success.
Yeah, it absolutely is. I mean, I really look at it as just I don't want to call it a forcing function, but that pivotal part of this whole mechanism, this whole machine that we're in of doing that. I did see a question come in. We're going to get to it in a second, but it actually serves as a perfect reminder for everybody on the on the call. By all means, please put your questions in the chat. Love to or have a little QA at the end, but get those coming in, and we'll definitely get to them here in a few minutes. But when I really start to think about that growth of it, and how do we get RevOps to grow? There's a lot of folks on the call that are in RevOps, sales ops, marketing ops, systems ops, X ops at this point. When you start to think of how do they grow in their career, that's one of the questions that we're kind of coming in, so we'll tackle it sort of offhand. We see the importance of it, what you're talking about as a pre-IPO company that is now just leveraging so much of this day in and day out to drive the business. From a growth perspective, how do you see somebody that is in that very tactical role start to get up a little bit more into the growth stage? How do we go and aspire to go be an SVP of ROE?
Yeah, well, Harish, who we just hired, did 15 years working his way up at NetSuite, and he was actually a computer science major before that. So I think there's the logical piece, which is like, what can you learn? Well, the logical piece really is keep your head down, work hard, and you'll work your way up over time. The piece that I think a lot of people forget is like, what can you learn even like not in your role that'll set you apart from people on the resume pile? So are you collecting, are there ways that you can, take courses for all the main pieces of software where you can be like the go-to person. So for example, yes, you should be a Salesforce architect, admin, or whatever they're calling it these days. You know, I know Jonathan Mueller on our team is like an 8X Salesforce champion, whatnot. But like, what about the new technologies? Like, are you taking the certifications for things like outreach? Are there other ones for drift or whatever else where like, you know, when you go into an organization with that stack, you're going to be the best person to hire because you're a professional at that product, or that the rest of that stack. I think that's very important. You know, keeping your head down, working hard, working your way up. That's all well and good. Taking on projects, very strategic projects, is another great way to work your way up. So if there are certain things that need to be tackled or things that you think of that you can bubble up to the organization, obviously reading and being in groups like WizOps and things like that will not only build your network larger and give you the opportunity to rise up in the ranks diagonally, right, by going to another company, but not just going, you know, horizontally, but going to another company and getting a higher title, but also learning about things that people are doing in their organizations and then bringing some of those great ideas to your organization and then making a name for yourself as somebody who's forward thinking and is going out and finding the best, you know, the best practices and bringing back to the table with your revenue team and your organization, saying, hey, we should be investing in this. We should bring in this technology. We should double down on X, or, you know, we're not thinking about Y, right? So I'd go in that direction, double down on the communities, get to know a lot more of your peers and find out what people are doing that's moving the needle for them, and see if you can do that yourself.
I love it. I'm going to put a pin in the communities piece of it because we got a little bit to talk about it towards the end. You know, the one thing that I start to think about, and you mentioned this with Harish, right? Bringing someone on who has done so much, and look, you don't get to grow your career overnight. You definitely got to put the legwork in. You got to walk the mile, walk many miles to get that experience. But you even said this way at the very beginning of the call, where bringing someone on in that type of role that could also be in front of a customer. I think too often, and we're seeing this evolution of this now, but I remember in my career over the last 10 years of doing, you know, operations in different SaaS companies, I wasn't brought on to too many customer calls. And I found it a tad ironic because I am actually being brought into so many of the customer buying cycles. I've got, you know, you're now seeing sales ops, rev ops be at the table when they are evaluating software. Why haven't we brought them on as sales or thought leaders in sales cycles? So it's sort of my question to you, seeing the importance of that and knowing how y'all incorporate that at Outreach, bringing folks from the operations team in the sales cycle. How do you see the value of that and sort of that evolution of it? Because it's a newer trend that we're seeing, bringing your own ops folks to deals.
It's hugely valuable. I mean, it also depends on the industry. For us, it's hugely valuable. And we talk to a lot of sales ops folks on the other side. So it's great when we can have someone like Harish, or even, you know, folks more junior that can come in and say, oh yeah, this is how it's done. And I think a lot of our solutions consultants, you know, are trained in outreach so much so that they could probably do, you know, outreach admin jobs or some level of rev ops at some companies, because we sell software for salespeople, right? So if we were selling cybersecurity or something else, probably wouldn't be the same way. So it's hugely valuable, especially for us. I think it's probably valuable for every organization, because they understand, you know, how the ins and outs of data, how everything connects, and you know, how your company uses whatever it is that you're selling, and they understand, you know, how that interacts with the sales team and the operations folks in that business. Now, it depends, I think, where rev ops rolls up to. Sometimes you see an organization where it rolls up to operations. Sometimes you see an organization where it rolls up to revenue. I'd say usually if it's under revenue, it's under sales, you know, not marketing. But really, I think it's very not one size fits all. It's up to your business, and it's something that I think everybody should take a look at and see if this is something that you know, makes sense for us to use in deal cycles.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I look back now, and we're a few months into this, but in our hiring journey at Sonar, obviously a lot of what our platform is doing is providing a new blueprint for all of these companies' sales and tech stacks, and help you understand how your CRM is working, how it's working very well with outreach and all these other systems. One of our strategic hires earlier this year was to hire a sales and revenue engineer. And what's really interesting about that is we did a couple things. We knew it was going to be a little bit of a technical person, somebody that could come in and really help be on the sales engineering side. For everybody on our call, and a lot of folks, we have some customers here that have met Mitchell on our team. The unique thing about him, his role here at Sonar is a little dual role. 80% of it is sales engineer. The other 20% is actually running our internal operations. So he is our ops guy. And when we talk to our customers, how do we, he said earlier, drink your own champagne? How do we use our own system internally? We have the guy that's not only the expert in how to show you how to use it, but he's also going to give you a peek under the covers and see exactly how we use it. And I think the big piece that he just brings so much value in, he was also a previous Sonar customer. So he just gets on these calls and it's like, you guys want to know how we use it here and how I use it over there? How much time do you have? And it helps that buyer understand so much of the value that you can have. And I know you guys are doing a lot of the same strategy.
Yeah, I think it's great if your product touches RevOps and you can hire from a customer, it's fantastic because they understand the value, they know how to use it. It works right off the bat.
Yeah, absolutely. I know we said I want to spend a little bit of time on communities. I think this is kind of be a two-part question because it kind of answers itself. But we talked about earlier about how can customers level up on their own, and you're spot on. Getting certifications, getting more industry experience, both Salesforce certs, outreach certs. A lot of platforms now are having their own certification programs, which I absolutely love. As a side note, part of our Wizard of Ops community, when we have a Wizard of the Month, one thing that we want to do to elevate others is sponsor some of those continuing education. So once a month, we're signing somebody up for a new certification and paying for it so we can help elevate them in their career. So I guess the twofold question, we can continue on with what are some of the other strategies to level up, but as somebody who started a community himself, and we've seen how Sales Hacker has just blown up and done so well with what you've done, what Scott's doing now, how valuable do you see these communities and how do you see them evolving and growing in the future as well?
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you what, I started a media company. It built my brand pretty insanely over the amount of time that I ran it. And I've seen a lot of the people who've built their brands and the up and comers come through, like we've helped them. We've put them on a pedestal on our community, or we've seen them in other communities. And, it's the number one thing you can do to get ahead is take risks, things, share your experience. People learn from that experience. They gravitate towards you. When you're involved in these communities, obviously be sharing as much as you possibly can, but there's plenty of times where you're going to get value out of what other people are saying that you can then go use at your company. And then now this is a fresh idea in your organization. If it works, you get credit for it. And that's how you level up in your own organization. So I think there's communities are the best way to take advantage of, the opportunities you have ahead of you in your career, and get out in front of your superiors or your team and whatnot, and bring those fresh ideas to the table, because that's where you can generate them. You can generate them from what other people are doing that already works. And you can even spend extra time with them and get their playbook, even if it's not in a thread in Slack. You can spend time with them on Zoom. And what I've found is that, especially in sales and especially in RevOps, it's a great community where people have each other's backs. It's very empathetic, and they're willing to spend that extra time and have those conversations and say, hey, here's how we're doing this. And not only is it empathetic, but I think people genuinely geek out on what they do in RevOps. So it's, I get what you're going through. Here's how we did it, but this is fun. Here's how we did this thing, and here's how we built it out. And that's a great community to be a part of when people are nice and people like what they do, right? So take so much advantage of that. And you guys are doing a great job with WizOps. And I know there's, Modern Sales Pros, Revenue Collective, Sales Hacker, a lot of sales communities out there that you can get involved in that, may not just be RevOps focused, but, overall sales focused. And there are so many people out there that are generous with their time and their mind and, the things that they're doing at their organization. So it's a great profession to be in, but it's also a great time to be in it. We didn't have these communities just a few years ago. This is all new stuff. So I'm super grateful for, the timing that we're all involved in this.
Yeah. And I think one thing that we can attribute to it, and it's not to make light of a very intense situation we've all been in this year, but look, we don't all get to be in the same room as much anymore.
Yeah.
Typically, Max, you'd be in Atlanta, I'd be in Austin, we'd both be in Seattle doing this somewhere, or San
Yeah.
Francisco, where we typically hang out. But, we don't have the luxury of doing that. And when we don't all get to be in the same room, how do we all get to be in the same virtual room? And I
Yeah.
think you're seeing just this thriving community aspect because of it. The one thing that I see as these things evolve, and I think there's one thing that we could also even kind of debunk. I think the coolest part about these communities, not many of them are very competitive. We're all in this, like, how do we help each other get better? In that example, we've done work with Sales Hacker. I've been on panels and I've been a moderator for MSP, did the same thing for Revenue Collective. And I think what's so great about that is that we're all here for the same reason. We all want to help each other grow. I do think specifically on the operation side, because most of the times, and kind of going back to one of your first points, operations teams can be lean. They're not always this 50-person organization. So
Yeah.
what ends up happening is that person doesn't have somebody to go tap on their shoulder and say, how did you
Yep.
solve this problem? How can we troubleshoot it? And so they have to turn to communities. So
yeah, and the company, like, I think that's one of the best things about the communities these days that are coming up is, companies, your family, when you're at work, okay, all good. You've got the community with your company and your employees, but like, they could fire you at any minute. You can go get another job. There might be some tension if you want a raise and they're not willing to give you one. And you need a community to be able to go to be able to say, like, hey, how did you guys negotiate this raise? Or how did you, what was the next title up for you? Like, what does your org chart look like? And how should I be building out my promo pathing or my career path? My company doesn't really have a good, version of this, so like, I'm going to go bring one to the table. There, I guess there's so many cool things you could do now. So it's great.
If there's anything I learned about it, and just, kind of as a reminder, when we started WizOps, Sonar wasn't what we are now. We started WizOps well before Sonar. And I was using this on a daily practice because I had a small, lean team, and I was trying to find great thought leaders like Dan Grossberg, who's in our community, just amazing guy who brings so much to the table. Even some of the folks, I think some folks on here, Nick Swider, who I talk to and bounce ideas off of, that are, always trying to figure out how do we all level up. But I think what's so unique about it is that you go and vet this out to the community. And I saw this in practice, and it helped me succeed at Terminus. I brought some of those community ideas back and said, hey, I took a pretty wide approach here. I asked a lot of other thought leaders in this space how they're doing this. Here's what I came back with. And there's just so few outlets for that right now. Obviously, it's growing. The community space is growing, but it does help you build credibility in your role at your company when you say, hey, I casted this out to 1,500 people in WizOps, or 16,000 in MSP, and 10,000, with Sales Hacker. Here's what I got back. I think that just helps build that credibility. So, yeah. As a quick reminder, I know we're already at the 30-minute or so mark. We want to be conscious of everybody's time, so we'll kind of keep going for a few more minutes. As always, for anybody that's on the call right now, any questions you have for me and Max, please drop them into the Q&A section. We'll tackle them. Max, we did have one come through that I'll toss over to you. You kind of talked about this, but if the company doesn't have a well-defined RevOps promotion track, and the reality is we're all still figuring this out. We're trying to figure out the levels of how this organization works. What are some of the things that you can do that are strategic to help you value up or level up for your career path, so that you're just recognized as someone that could be potentially up for the promotion?
Definitely. Bringing new ideas to the table. And that, we mentioned how I like to use communities to do that. I don't think that just because it's a new idea for your company means it has to be a new idea in general. So that's why communities are great, because you can generate ideas that may not be new but are proven and working, and bring those back to the table. And I think that's obviously the best way to prove yourself. I think a lot of these promo paths aren't really built out for RevOps, because it's changing so much right now with the tech landscape, and how companies have to keep up with that. So becoming an expert at like one piece of the stack, or how the stack connects, makes you indispensable. It makes you dangerous. That's what we like to call it. What is that one thing that's going to make you dangerous? What is that one thing that's like going to be your go-to that like you can be the best at, or you can be known for, or you can be like, the person that like if they cut every cost tomorrow they couldn't live without type thing. So thinking about your existence at a company almost in that respect, where it's like, oh man, I can go anywhere because I have this thing that nobody else has. Or I'm here for good because I've got this thing that like, they can't do without me. How do you think about it like that? And in terms of like the promo pathing, if they don't have an org chart, I would press your team, your leadership to have some promo path. I give them some time to create it, maybe like that, let's say. But like, you should have a promo path laid out. And at certain size companies, it's not going to happen. It's just Series A, Series B. You can kind of just be like, all right, well, we'll see where this goes. It's too soupy for every role, really, at those size companies. But eventually, at a certain size company, like, you should know, where is this leading? What do I like? What Here are my goals. Here are OKRs. We're hitting these things. What does the rest of this look like for me?
Yeah, I love that. I think the one thing I got this bit of advice a long time ago when I was on my career path trying to figure out what some of my next steps were. I think it's a good constant reminder, and you just said this, that give your company an opportunity to help you grow in it. Again, we're all figuring this out. So if there's anything you should do, be vocal. Let people know that you're excited about what you're doing. You're even more excited about the next step. How can we all get there together? But there's a constant reminder to just be cognizant of that. Everybody, we talked about those two trajectories earlier, right? About technology and how our teams are growing. Well, you can use that same analogy with how, the trajectory of the growth of a company and the trajectory of the growth of a person. And unfortunately, those always are on the exact same ratio or the exact same path, right? You might, as a person, grow faster in your skill set than the company has. And so you're ready to level up, but the company doesn't have that position yet. Same thing applies. So many people get frustrated these days when it's like, man, I can't believe they hired above me. They brought a new boss in for me. Like, well, sometimes the company's growing at a rate where they need, very, very strong leadership, and your career path hasn't grown at that same trajectory yet. So
Yeah.
it was a really good reminder for me, early when one of my mentors told me that. So this is the last question, and as we all start to kind of wrap up a little bit, just as a reminder, obviously we have this recording that we'll get out to everybody that has joined, but last one was, if you don't have a clear promotion path, figure that out for yourself. What part of the org chart should we want to report up to? Do we think of these as one size fits all strategy, or does it depend on the company's leadership and personality? Ooh, boil that one down. And man, I wish we had another 45 minutes. Where does RevOps sit? Where in the org chart does it want to report up to? I would know about outreach, but I'll get your thoughts on it.
Yeah. And there was a time where it rolled up to operations here, and then eventually moved over to sales. I think it belongs in sales. I think it belongs in sales, but it has to tie to the financial plan. It has to tie closely to operations, but I think it belongs in sales. I don't know if it's one size fits all. I don't know if I would make that blanket statement. I think most of the time I would agree that it fits in sales. Doesn't mean that I don't think that there are fringe cases, edge cases, and whatnot that would belong in another part of the organization. So I'd say that's my short answer for the amount of time that we have.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, you have to work with, I feel like you have to prioritize working with the reps over working with finance. You have to tie to the plan, but you have to understand your sales org. And so that's why I think it lives in sales.
Yeah, I can tend to agree. I think you're spot on. It is not a one size fits all. I even look back at my career. The first time I really jumped into operations, I was under the professional services arm. We were a services business at Cloud Sherpas. When I was at Gather, I started working for the VP of Sales, and about 3 months in, moved into working directly for the CEO. I got to Terminus. I started working for the CRO. 6 months in, I moved under finance. I was under the CFO. And I think, my story is not too far dissimilar from a lot of folks, but I think what we're realizing, the common denominator is that we're all figuring it out. And I think every business has its own use case for it, which is exactly what you just said. So I know we're getting right there at the top of time. in a couple parting words, I don't know if you have any last thoughts, Max, on just the evolution of operations and where you're excited to see it go.
Yeah, it's a really exciting time. I think we're in the really early stages, to use a baseball term, and we're in the first, one or two innings of SaaS software in general, and especially in the sales and marketing spaces. So, we went from recently just having Salesforce and data to now we have got data lakes, we've got outreach, we've got conversational intelligence, conversational marketing, so many different categories, direct mail. This is going to be a role that I think there's a big double and triple down on in the future. And so I think everybody here is, I had a 18-year-old kid right now. I'd be saying, go to college and learn this stuff so you can get out and get into rev ops, because I think it's going to be, really the future here. So, applaud all of you, and looking forward to catching everybody in this group.
I love it. As always, Max Altschuler, VP of Sales Engagement and Outreach. Can't thank you enough for jumping in with us. Always enjoy the conversation. To everybody, again, thank you all for joining. We'll get the recording out as soon as it's ready. But if we don't get to talk to everybody before the end of the year, hope you all have a safe and happy holiday. And on to 21. Got a lot of stuff to do, so let's all get back to it. Max, thank you again.
Let's get it. All right. Thanks,
let's
guys.
get it. Talk to you soon, buddy. See ya.
See ya.
See ya.